The three most complicated fluids that we know of are blood, red wine, and olive oil. And this to me, like when I say I can see flavor, like when I taste this has a lot going on. This is a symphony with a lot of instruments. You've got the fruit in one section, all the different, a little bit of grapefruit, a little bit of fig, a little bit of cherry compote, berries, a little bit of green apple, but like baked apples. So that's like the fruit section, right? And then you've got the spice section, and I'm imagining this orchestra in my mind of this wine.
Did you get it yet? In your inbox? My wine tips cheat sheet? No? What are you waiting for? It's free. I'll send it to you. This thing took me way too long to put on paper and craft my thoughts and my tips for you on wine, but it's super helpful and super easy. And if you go to sipwithnikki.com/resource, I'll email it to you. Where to start with this week's guest? I met Dr. Hoby Wedler over a decade ago. I was inspired by him. I was excited to learn more about him and learn with him. And we have been friends and entrepreneurs together pretty much since then. He has been completely blind since birth and is a chemist and an entrepreneur. He's a sensory expert. He loves wine and he loves Dave Matthews, just like I do. So I knew we were going to be fast friends. Hoby has a PhD in organic chemistry from UC Davis, which that in and of itself blows my mind. He founded a nonprofit in 2011 that helps to lead chemistry camps for blind and visually impaired students. He's won numerous awards. I can't list them all here, but some that I find very noteworthy. This gentleman named President Barack Obama recognized Hoby as a champion of change for enhancing employment and educational opportunities for people with disabilities. And he, maybe this is jealousy speaking, but he has acquired 2 awards that I have aged out of and will never be in the running for. 30 Under 30, Forbes Media, 30 Under 30's annual publication, named him as a leader in food and drink. And then he was named 40 Under 40 Tastemakers by the Wine Enthusiast, which is one of my favorites. He is fun, funny, smart, inspiring. He has an amazing palate and sensory when it comes to wine. So I thought it would be really fun for us to taste some wines together in our Sip Spotlight this week. For the first time ever, we have a quadruple Sip Spotlight. We have 4 wines. We each brought 2 to the table, didn't tell the others what they were. And you'll hear us kind of break it down. And spoiler alert, I may have snuck one of my Solovato Sangioveses into the tasting without telling him. So you'll have to hear what he thinks. So excited for you to get to know Hoby. Here we go. Well, I'm so glad that you're here today.
Nikki, thank you so much. We've been fast friends for a long time, and just getting to chat with you on air is so much fun, and I'm so proud of everything you've done. You've just your entry from the time that you entered into the industry to where you are now is like almost gives me chills to think about. It's awesome.
Dude, this is not about me, okay?
No, but 12 years in the industry and you're already doing all this stuff. You're doing your podcast, you're doing your own wine. It's like, that's so cool.
Well, I might be taking after someone I know who also is a multi-passionate entrepreneur who might have his hand in a million different products and projects at one time. So we're 2 birds of a feather.
We are, but we somehow we seem to manage all the obligations.
Well, I remember the first time I met you. I think that's a good starting place for our conversation today. So when I was working at Pride, you came and actually taught the staff members, the tasting room wine educators,
that's right.
You led us in a quote unquote blind tasting
in the dark. Yeah, we did the whole sensory experience with different aromas, and really tried to feature and it's not hard to do this. We featured the Pride wines and just let people understand, hey, how this growing region in where we are in California, Northern California, Napa, Sonoma particularly, just shines through the amazing wines.
Well, it was such an interesting experience because I remember you had special blindfolds for us and you lined us up in the wine caves. We were like single file and we kind of choo-choo trained into the room where the tables and all the glassware were set up. This is at least 10 years ago.
I'm trying to think back. Yeah,
at least 10 years ago.
I think it was.
And then you had glasses in front of us with all of the different wines that the winery makes, and reds and whites were interspersed. All mixed in, and everything was at the same temperature. And I remember there was a moment where I picked up our Viognier, which is a very full-bodied white wine, very floral and aromatic. And for a quick moment when it hit my lips, I was like, is this Cabernet Franc? Which is a very floral, aromatic red wine, listener.
I can completely understand that, association, because they're both big and flowery. And Nikki, this reminds me of a fun story. I was doing an event for the Institute of Masters of Wine at Timber Cove a while ago, and they were doing a whole California tour, which they do every 5 years or so. Every year they go to a different region. And I had a chat after the experience with Tim Atkin, who's a great master of wine from London, England. And he said, it's interesting because when you can see a wine and you can guess by its color, okay, this is a Sauvignon Blanc, a whole drop down of Sauvignon Blanc-y terms comes to mind. And when you don't...
word, Sauvignon Blanc-y?
That's a word for today.
Okay. Just checking. Okay.
Those Sauv Blanc terms come to mind and are in your mind. And when you can't see the wine, that doesn't happen. So you end up kind of second guessing yourself, just like you're saying. For the listeners who like to try a lot of different wines and who are nerdy like us...
Excuse me? What did you just call
nerdy
me?
like me. Okay.
Yeah. No, we are two nerds sitting here at my kitchen table. Yes.
We love it. But seriously, try a Viognier, like Nikki mentioned, next to a Cabernet Franc, and you'll notice they're really similar. There's some, and by the way, because they were grown in the same area on the same mountaintop, they're going to be even more similar.
Gosh, I have so many things I want to talk about with you, so I'm trying to totally focus. So let's do this. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about just kind of what brought you into the world of wine and what brought you into the world of chemistry with your PhD in chemistry, and which came first, and how does one help you with the other?
Oh man, I love this question. So I would say that wine actually came first because I grew up in southern Sonoma County in the town of Petaluma. And I've always had this love for what I call hyperlocality. So things that are happening right around me that people notice. And my parents are not in the industry, but they were home winemakers a few years before I was born.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you that, but my dad and mom together made some really nice Zinfandel from Dry Creek and Cabernet, actually from the Sierra foothills, Cabernet Sauvignon, that I got to smell and taste little bits of in my early childhood because they were still drinkable then. Now, the most recent vintage they have is from 82, and they're tasting a little bit vinegary, but I'll have to see if my dad can open one because they might be fine. Let me get back here, though. I was just thinking through this love for hyperlocality, for where does the water come from that enters my house? Where does, gray water go when it leaves the house? How does power get to the house? These sorts of things. And I just had this innate interest in the wine industry because I knew that grapes were being grown virtually in my backyard and then turned into this world-class juice and then sold around the world as Sonoma County wine. So I would like smelling wines and going out to vineyards and listening to tractors move earth and smelling, man, when a tractor digs up a big pile of earth and you just smell that beautiful wet soil, it's just incredible. So I've always loved these sorts of things. And then I did go to school at UC Davis and took a couple of wine appreciation classes, one on an intro to winemaking and one on wines of the world. And
this
actually
was during your undergrad?
During undergrad. And then while I was a grad student during my first year, one of my electives was really delving into the biochemistry and organic chemistry of wine, which was...
Sorry, okay, no, I'm good. Continue.
No, which was a lot of fun to to study that stuff. And
when I hear the words organic chemistry, this just like involuntary, like rolling under my tongue starts, I'm still getting over being scarred from my undergrad. But please continue.
Sure you did.
Just don't say the OC words
I'm sure you
again.
did very well in that class.
Oh, so well. I took it twice because I didn't pass it the first time.
No, but I for me, it was an experience that really pulled me into wine with family. My partner, Justin's stepfather, actually got us excited about wines, really nice California wines. He's the one who introduced us to Pride. And I remember my first taste of something that really blew my mind was actually a glass of the 2001 Pride Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wow.
And it was just this stunning glass of wine. Those were the Bob Foley days. So it was big and ripe and cool. And I don't know, it's just full of flavor and full of this, really interesting complexity that I'd never tasted before. And then when I was just finishing my undergraduate tenure and starting grad school, I got a call from Francis Ford Coppola's team who wanted to do an interesting, truly blind tasting, which developed into tasting in the dark, for their guests as a hospitality experience for consumers at their Sonoma County wineries. And when Francis Ford Coppola calls and asks if you'll do something, you say yes, and then you hang up the phone and realize, oh no, what did I just agree to? But I was able to, he really gave me the reins with it and let me innovate.
Did you speak to him?
Talked to one of his business partners.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, this is something we want to do. We met him several times later, but it was...
You talked to his consigliere.
I think so. I think that's exactly who she was. And that's hilarious. And, this experience got launched. One thing led to another. And soon the national sales team picked it up. And the lucky thing for me about being a computational organic chemist is my laptop was my laboratory. And I had an advisor who really understood, what I was doing and wanted me to try all sorts of different pathways. So he was totally fine with me traveling a lot and exploring as long as I got my graduate work done. But I met all these amazing people in this industry. And that's the thing that I would say so first and foremost about the wine industry is that people are amazing. They pull you in, right?
Because we're birds of a feather, because we're not only a little bit nerdy with how things make us feel when we smell and taste and wondering why, but we just tend to be, a little more high feeling on the feeling scale, right?
Well, and
I'm generalizing, but
we all are artists that happen to be scientists as well, And
well, you just said it so much better than I was trying to say it. Say that again. That's awesome.
We are, as wine people, birds of a feather, as you say, we are both artists and scientists. And I think wine is this amazing little field, little micro field, if you will, where we can straddle that intersection that is so fine between art and science, figuring out what is science versus what is art. Wine is both. I consider winemakers artists who happen to know a little biochemistry, and because it's your craft. You are a winemaker, and I can say this to you, your art form goes into that bottle and is what you taste, what your friends and customers taste when they enjoy your wines, right? So I just got pulled in and attracted to this industry. Tasting in the Dark has expanded to beer and spirits and oil and vinegar and all sorts of markets and industries around the world. But it's like this, whenever I get to work with wine, it brings me home. Wine feels like home in so many respects. And going back to chemistry, when I was in high school, I took a chemistry class and just fell in love with the science. And the instructor really wasn't sure how this would work and was not very motivating to the fact that I loved chemistry and wanted to study chemistry at the undergraduate level until I told her that, hey, nobody can see atoms. Everything we do is cerebral, right? You might be able to see a reaction change color. You might be able to see some gases effervesce or being evolved from a reaction flask. But we actually spend huge amounts of money in the chemical industry, designing eyeballs, designing things that can see and detect light at wavelengths that we cannot see. Because if we look at the electromagnetic spectrum from radio waves, which are very long, almost 2 meters long, all the way to gamma rays, which are on the scale of picometers long, The little tiny range we can see is from 400 to 700 nanometers, right? That's a little tiny speck. The way I look at it is if you were to draw a line from here, where we are sitting in northern Santa Rosa, down to Petaluma, the range, and that represents the whole electromagnetic spectrum, the range that we can see in visible light is probably about 1/10 of a mile. I did that calculation before coming here just to make this point.
Wow.
So much of chemistry is non-visual, and I fell in love with that part of it and the fact that I can do organic chemistry and, sorry about the word, and use that, use my mind for what I've had to do ever since I was a toddler for my survival as a blind traveler, because I can't see anything. I visualize things, and, literally the thought of turning one finicky molecule into another is not that different than thinking about how to get from here to the local Safeway on foot. It's the same sort of thing. I can imagine streets and buildings and think about atoms and how they connect by bonding in the same exact vein. And to bring this back to wine, for me, when I smell wine, I literally see flavor. I really feel like it's the closest thing for me to looking at a painting when I smell a glass of wine and think about it and understand it. And, some art forms, we're very subjective with we're very objective with visual art. You might look at a painting and say, yeah, that's gorgeous. You might look at another one and say, oh, this is hideous. Why would I hang that on my wall? Right? But the same thing is true with wines. People are so often so subjective about wine because they don't necessarily quite know what they like. So I advise all listeners to drink more wine and be decisive and see what you like and see what you don't like, because wine is a tapestry of flavor and color and aroma and texture. And, I wanted to teach chemistry. My goal was to make freshman chemistry fun to a group of 400 freshmen at 8 a.m. on a Monday after a long weekend of partying. And I taught enough chemistry classes in graduate school to realize that I was making my lectures very accessible to my students, but not accessible to myself. And what I love about wine and about the product development work that I do all across the wine and spirits industry and food industry too, is that I'm able to use my chemistry every day and I'm able to teach about chemistry. So I'm able to do both things that I've always loved.
You, speaking about being a big feeler, you took my breath away about 2 paragraphs ago with something that you said, and I'm still recovering because it was so beautiful when you said about when you smell wine. Yeah. It's like the closest thing you can have to looking at a piece of artwork. Am I paraphrasing it?
You're saying exactly right. Or feeling or being in nature, these things that I imagine what it's like to see. I feel like the same neurons are stimulated when I taste wine. And for me, honestly, Nikki, it's not like my palate was developed just because I'm blind and I have heightened senses, even though that's a lot of people think. Training your palate, as you've learned as well, takes practice. It's like learning to play a musical instrument really well.
We really have to drink so much wine.
I know. What
to
a
get
shame,
good at
right?
this, right?
but it's like when you're walking down the grocery aisle, smell the celery, smell the parsley, smell the cilantro, smell the basil, smell the Asian pears, smell the blackberries. So when we can taste a wine and we say, hey, Nikki, do you taste the lemon in here? You say, yeah, I do. And you remember what lemon smelled like, because so often we use our eyesight to obtain 85 to 90% of our information from our surroundings, right? Which means that aromatics and flavors are just another language. They're just words in another language, but so often our aromatic vocabularies aren't where they should be. So I encourage anyone who wants to get more into wine, just as a consumer or as a winemaker, build that aromatic vocabulary so you can speak about the flavors and textures and aromas of wine. And once you do that for wine, you can do it for anything.
It's, I love when you talk about this topic because I have tried to explain it to people over the years. When you say, smell everything, smell the flowers, smell the produce, right? I call it developing that card catalog in your brain.
That's what it is.
Because you're not going to be able to say, oh, this wine has hints of currant.
No.
if you can't identify and remember what a currant smells like.
Exactly.
So by smelling it and sort of filing it away in that drawer in your brain, then having the recall to then notice it, recognize it in wine, and be able to pull that drawer out, remove that card and say, yep, that's currant.
That's it.
Right?
And it's so funny because we do that with color. You have the card catalog in your mind of color when you're a child, right? I tested this with my nephew who's 6 years old. I held a red pen up in front of him and I said, hey, Rito, what color is this? And he said, Uncle Hoby, that's a silly question. It's a red pen. But then I blended up some peach in a cup and I didn't let him see it. And I said, what does that smell like? He said, I don't know, sweet. And I did that to prove that we need to take some time to hone those card catalogs for a sense that we don't often train enough.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
And I have to give a shout out to all of the European Union. They just focus so much. We do a lot in Italy. I know you're from Italy originally. Your family's from Italy originally.
That's right.
It has a really soft spot in both of our hearts. The whole country of Italy and Italian
Although you've
food.
spent more time there, I think, in the last 3 years.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that there's like food and beverage are so important there in Europe. Mm-hmm. And I want so badly for people in this country to realize the importance of taking time to smell things. When you're driving to work and you're feeling stressed, open the window and smell the air. I don't care whether it's raining or whether it's blazing hot outside. Get that. Smelling things will relax you. It will relax you. And
Why do you think that is?
For me, it's because, and I can't speak for other people, but for me, it's because I know when I'm really in tune with these senses that I have to be focused and not focused on other things. So it's a way for me to clear my head. It's almost meditative for me.
I love that.
And by the way, I always, maybe I drink more wine than I should, but for me, it doesn't matter what night of the week it is, but coming home after a long, stressful day, even if I have been remembering to smell my surroundings and smell the air, having a glass of wine while I cook is just therapeutic.
Oh,
It's
I'm
just
right there with you.
calming.
Mm-hmm.
It goes right to the top of my cutting board. It just hangs there. And not drinking to drink, but drinking to smell and taste and analyze the wine and think about it and almost take it as a challenge. It's just fun.
It is. And I agree. Wine is a part of my cooking ritual as well. And that's why I was like, I'm not even going to think about the dry January. Sorry, folks, because it's such a part of the cooking ritual itself, right? So we're on the same page with that.
One of the things that I really want to talk about just briefly here as it relates to the amazing benefits of wine. There's this kind of movement that I don't want to get myself in trouble, but the neo-prohibitionism movement, where the millennials and Gen Zers are looking at what everybody else is doing, trending on social media. So now a lot of them are like not drinking anything and doing cold plunges into icy ponds. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't say that alcohol is healthy, but let me tell you about the complex organic chemistry that takes place in a bottle of wine, that's present in a bottle of wine. Wines have these
amazing... Go ahead, make chemistry sexy. Go.
Thank you for that opportunity. I always love when I can make chemistry sexy. Wines have these compounds in them called flavonoids. And flavonoids are flavorizing molecules. One of the most common ones is resveratrol. And if you look it up, it is so incredibly healthy. It's
antioxidant and anti-aging, right?
Yes, and lower
it's used
blood
in
pressure.
Skincare products and
Yep, and red wines have more of it than any other food or drink that we'd necessarily eat.
Well, that's why I look the way I do, right, Hoby?
I mean, look
at me. Look at.
You don't look a day over 20, okay? The other thing that really is amazingly healthy is a class of compounds called catechins, and particularly epicatechin. No, but catechins, and in particular epicatechin, is this amazing class of antioxidant that is also in the class of flavonoids that is like a miracle drug. Anti-diabetic, blood pressure lowering, heart health, all this stuff. And you get it by drinking red wine. And there's another fact here that I think is really cool, which is that your cells have membranes which we call selectively permeable. Some things are allowed in, some things aren't. Well, alcohol can permeate most cell membranes very easily and readily. So when alcohol gloms on to some of these really healthy things
Is
like
glom
epicatechin,
a official chemistry word?
oh, totally.
Okay.
We glom all the time. When I wrote my doctoral thesis, glom was probably appeared more times than it should.
GLAM?
GLOM. Glom together. No,
Glam?
glom. But when these things
Glom.
when
If you're
these-
from New Jersey, glom.
when these things glom onto ethanol molecules, they come into your cell, and then often the ethanol goes out and the little goodness stays in your cell. So the other really good compounds in wine are polyphenols, bipheноls, antioxidants in general. Wine is the best antioxidant for you, just in so many ways. And we're talking about red wine. White wines also have some good chemistry too.
But the 4 wines that you and I are about to taste right now are all red. So there's that.
Correct.
So
We're about to taste mostly reds. And what I'm trying to say is that a little bit of wine is not bad for you.
Okay. Well, let's have some. That's a perfect
Okay.
point to move into our sip spotlight. Sip spotlight. So this is the first time in so many episodes of Sip with Nikki, 11, that we are having a quadruple sip spotlight.
Love it.
So when you and I were prepping, we had a plan, you and I, that we would
did.
each bring one wine to the table that we would cover and, quote, blind taste each other on. So we don't know what it is. And we were each supposed to bring a wine. And I couldn't decide, so I picked 2. And when you showed up today, you had
2 wines as
Two
well. I
as
couldn't
well.
decide.
so
Without
we
talking to each other, we ended up with 4 instead
we're
of 2.
both nerds, we're both overachievers, and we better get working because we got 4 wines here.
And for me, just really quickly, Nikki, for me, what's so special about tasting wine with someone like you is that, it's not about tasting and guessing, and the Tasting in the Dark event that we do is not at all about guessing or anything like that. The blindfold is really, and we're not blindfolded here or anything. The blindfold in that.
Should I be?
No.
Okay.
In that tasting, the blindfold is just meant to focus your attention a little bit differently than it's normally focused. But here, Nikki and I are just really into flavors and aromas and regions and this sort of thing. So we're going to talk about what these wines taste like, and just have a casual, but I'm sure nerdy discussion about wine.
Thank you, Justin. Justin is here on the sidelines.
Justin.
Pouring this beautiful wine. And so here's a confession. So immediately I want to talk about the color of this wine.
Let's do it. And if you can explain the color to me, that would be really fun.
Well, is that the right thing to do? Or am I relying on my
No,
85% of sight in my experience?
We're both in our normal environment. You're sighted, I'm not. So feel free to explain the color. But first, cheers, friend.
Cheers. So I am just looking at it right now, and the first thing I noticed when it was hitting the glass, it is not purple.
Right.
It has a very garnet, ruby, almost brickish color, which immediately leads me to believe it might have a little bit of age on it because of the saturation of color, and also because the edges of the wine that go to the glass feather out and look a little watery. And I know that's not water because I know the chemistry of wine, but that is
And these glasses were dry, by the way.
Yes,
we know that.
yes. But the color differentiation between the outside of this wine and the middle of this wine is different.
Yeah.
Which is also, for me, a clue that, again, this is probably not a wine from a year or 2 or 5 years ago, but maybe a little bit older than that. Am I on the right track?
Yes, and it might be from a little bit of a different region than you might be thinking right now.
Okay, so
let's smell.
Okay.
So when I smell that wine, it is really interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is honey.
And I got like licorice. Yeah. Or like star anise.
Oh my gosh, I totally see what you mean. Star anise. And then for me, there's like some really nice blackberry, like ripe blackberry. And then for me, when I cover the glass with one hand and swirl, this wine pops out with just amazing floral aromas. So we're going to hold our hand on top for just a second. And then
I just
smell.
did that. You always remind me to do that, and I love it. And I don't know why I do it. I don't do it more often to sort of concentrate the aromas in there and then move your hand away, and it's
crazy.
like pow, and it like.
And it almost to me is a little bit herbaceous, but I also get a little bit of Daphne. You know, the flower that.
Who's she?
Typically
What does she smell like? Is that an ex-girlfriend?
I love it.
Daphne.
No, but it really is. If you haven't smelled the flower Daphne before, you should find it because
That is not in my card catalog. I can't recall Daphne.
I'm going to find a Daphne flower and bring it to you because it blooms
So
in
romantic.
late February, early March.
Okay.
And it has this amazing like citrus/herbal character that I love.
My mouth is watering to taste
No,
this
let's
wine. I
taste
haven't
it.
tasted it yet. I've just been admiring it and the beauty of the subtlety of the color and those notes.
Let's taste it. Some wines, as they age, get a kind of tobacco nose.
I was just going to say this wine has one of my most favorite notes that I don't get on every single 10-plus-year-old wine, but on many, and it's dried tobacco.
Yes.
Like when you pick up an unlit cigar
Yes.
in the cigar shop and hold it
gosh.
like a mustache under your nose.
Yes. I've been known to do a lot of this.
And I absolutely got that on this, coupled with a really nice pucker of acidity that made me squinch my mouth a little bit, but in a yummy, yummy way. And then it made my mouth water.
Just because we're nerds, I picked up something that really, really strikes me in this wine. It's that tobacco, yes, but it's also like old leather.
Yes.
So what I get reminded of here is like walking through an old university library. Kind of that old book smell.
You would get that.
A little dusty. But then, you know, what library doesn't have a really nice cigar just hanging out in the stacks?
You'll get booted, expelled from that library smoking a cigar in there.
Is that what happened to me? Is that why I got expelled? Probably
This wine is stunning. It is. There's lots of layers in the glass. I want to sit on my leather recliner on this rainy Saturday with this and just let it tell me its story for the next hour and a half.
With your cuddly white Great
with
Pyrenees
Luke the
right
Great
next
Pyrenees.
to you.
Yeah, it's stunning.
That's fun. I just, it's unique and it's something I really wanted to share with you. What do you think if I were to ask you, what country is this from?
Well,
Now think about our common interest.
I mean, I'm going to say Italy.
That is correct. That is
But
correct.
I can't say that there was anything glaring in the I'm not good enough where I'm guessing that because of something I smelled or tasted. I'm kind of guessing that because I know you and you know me.
think about the lighter color.
Yeah.
A lot of the Italian red wines don't have that purple hue that we see in California red wines.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got that. It might not actually be quite as old as we think. This is actually a Chianti Classico
Nice.
from Italy. And considering our common interest, I thought it would be really fun to share this.
Basilica Solaccio? Is that how you say it?
Yep. So this is, I believe this is coming from Basilicata. And what year is it?
20. I had to put on my new progressive lenses to read it.
That's one thing as I get older that I'm excited I'll never have to deal with.
Oh, shit. Hoby.
I gotta give the
Nice.
snark too.
Oh my God, I love
give
it.
the snark too.
Yeah. See, nice. 2013.
So not quite that old, 11 years old.
But I said 10 plus,
You
and so
did.
we're there.
Yeah, we're there.
That is a beautiful wine. And it has the Chianti Classico black rooster on it. The chicken, which is the mark of authenticity.
And of course, this is from Chianti.
Yeah, that's going to be delicious with our wood fire pizza night that we're
Oh, my
doing
goodness.
when this is
I think
over.
that's going to be wonderful.
Okay, should we do your
right.
second wine next?
Let's do it.
Okay. Already,
Yeah.
this wine
Thank you, Frank.
has a lot deeper color.
And really, for this wine in particular, but every time I pour a new glass of wine in a glass that I've just sipped out of, I like to really roll the glass around to coat the inside with juiciness of the wine as possible. Smells like California, does it not?
It does. It just some fruit, some like fruity preserves just jumped out of the glass into my nose in a beautiful way.
You bet.
Oh, wow.
Strawberry.
So different than the last wine that we just had.
Totally different. And the color here, maybe you can describe that to us.
It is definitely has more of a purple hue than the last wine, which was more bricky, garnet, reddy. This has undertones of purple to it, which and not so feathered from the outside to the inside. So that tells me this is not as old as the other one. This wine has high tannin.
Yes.
It is percolating on my tongue.
Oh, yes.
With dryness and astringency.
I feel like I can see purple when I taste that. I don't know.
Dude, stop rocking my world with statements like that, okay?
I don't know what purple looks like, but we were walking the other day, and I pulled a leaf off of a bush, and I said, Justin, this smells like what green should be, and it's like this fresh-cut, grassy, like earthy smell. And he said, oh, I can see that. So
you've created associations to mark, quote, color in your psyche that are related to aroma.
Yeah, and flavor, because I've never seen color. I've just had to listen to people, and what they say looks a certain way. I tend to make my own funny associations, some of which I'm sure are very far from correct.
Well, like my dog is white like snow, which is actually very correct. This is fun, but so different than what we just had.
So different. And it is very different in the grape varietal as well.
I think it's from California.
Totally.
Almost Zinfandel-like with the ripe fruit leading.
Take a sip of this wine and breathe some air through it and really oxidize those tannins. You feel the astringency grow.
And
right?
this wine is higher alcohol.
Definitely.
Than the last one. Not in a bad way, but I'm just aware of it.
We would say hotter. Yeah.
Giving it weight and body in my mouth, too.
The other thing that I love about that little trick of oxidizing the tannins and feeling the astringency pop out is it shows you on a very granular level why it's important to open red wines a little bit before you drink them and let them oxidize themselves to bloom those tannins out.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's my chemistry question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just took a piece of bread to cleanse my palate. When you decant or aerate a wine, my understanding of the chemistry of what's happening is that the tannins themselves aren't actually diminishing.
Correct.
But the other elements of the wine are coming forward, which changes the perception of the tannin.
Yes, and it really takes it. Yeah, you nailed it. See, what did I say?
I know a little.
Biochemists
I know
and
a little.
You know your stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So I want you to take, I know you just clenched your palate, I'm sorry, but I want you to take one more sip of the wine.
Okay, because that's all I have left.
And I want you to swish it around your mouth like mouthwash.
He's very bossy, you guys.
I know,
bossy.
I can't control it, sorry. And then breathe a little air through it. And then tilt your jaw up and literally move your mouth as if you're chewing.
I literally just chewed my wine.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, right? Because
it changes the texture of the wine. Like now I have these beautiful tannins, and I like tannin in wine. I have these beautiful tannins on my teeth, and I love it. But a piece of cheese would neutralize the heck out of that in a good way.
Totally. And I also feel like when we chew on our wine, we're showing our palate different aspects of the wine that we wouldn't necessarily be seeing, for lack of a better word, because we don't normally chew on liquids.
Yeah. No, right? I love to chew my wine. So you're going to stop keeping me in suspense and tell me what this wine is?
I'm very excited to tell you what this wine is. This is not available on the market. This is Francis Ford Coppola's family wine that he makes for his family that they give folks that work with the winery as a gift. And I wanted you to taste this because it's a really fun... It's their wine. It's made from the Inglenook Estate.
In Rutherford, in the Napa Valley.
Yep. And he influences all the winemaking process, but this is the one where he really gets his hands dirty and helps make it.
Oh my goodness, Hoby.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. Sorry, guys, no link in the show notes to get this one.
Does not sell, but this will also be good later.
You'll have to go knock on Francis's door and ask him if he'll share the family wine with you.
Amen.
That is a special treat. Thank you so much.
And it's Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's California Cab, yeah?
California Cab,
Yeah.
mostly. There's probably a little bit of your other Bordeaux reds in there, maybe a little Cab Franc or Merlot. But this wine was gifted in 2017.
You've been cellaring this at your home, and this is what you picked to bring to the podcast recording?
Heck yeah.
I love you so much, friend. Thank you.
I was so excited about doing this. Okay,
Beautiful.
I am like so excited to try your first wine.
Okay, so you guys, I just poured my first of 2 wines, and I made sure that it was covered up with a bag so he couldn't see the label.
Thank you, because you know I like to cheat.
Cheater,
I
Cheater
know.
McCheaterson.
So what's the color on this, Nikki?
It is more subtle in its color, more of that purple hue than the brickish red.
Okay.
Color's not as concentrated as either of the last 2 wines that we had.
So it's a little bit more garnet, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle of the last 2. It's not as purple as the Coppola. It's not as brickish as the aged Chianti.
Not as brickish. Got it.
It's kind of right in the middle.
Yeah. So not looking like, it's probably looking like a wine just color-wise from within the past 5 to 7 years?
Yes. Yep. Not a huge differential in the middle to the outside, that rim variation as we call it.
I'm going to say cheers on your first wine.
Cheers.
Heck yeah. I never miss an opportunity to clink. I'm going to smell this. Okay, wow.
See, you're saying wow, and for me, and maybe it's just because I know what it is, it's not leaping out of the glass punching me like the last 2 did. It's just a little more subtle on the nose.
This is very fruit forward, but it's got a lot of really neat sort of viney character, sort of a bit of a leafy character on the nose, which I really like. A little bit of green pepper, which is also really nice, which is making me think, I know this is very early, but it's making me think it has some Cab Franc in it.
I will tell you it's 100%
Really?
of one variety.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Okay, I'm going to cover it.
Because I use my Vivino app in the store. I love my Vivino app. My listeners have heard me talk about it before. I was definitely scanning this label.
I love Vivino. That is really nice. You know what I like about this, Nikki, is that the acid level is a little bit higher. It's a little bit acidic, so it really crisps the palate. Not horribly tannic.
Nope, not horribly tannic. So that would guide us to guess certain grapes and maybe eliminate others.
So I would probably eliminate what I call the Bordeaux reds. I'd probably eliminate Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc Merlot.
This wine has a funny finish on my mouth because it's been about 25, 30 seconds since I had a sip, and it's hanging out. But I don't know if I love what is hanging out.
What I taste are some wood tannins, a slight bitter note. I'm going to guess this to be a grape that originates from Italy.
Nerd.
But maybe not from Italy, but maybe from Italy.
Don't second guess your instinct, sir.
So let me explain what I'm thinking. It's got a lightness like an Italian grape, and I can tell it's probably one of the many amazing Italian grapes, but it has this interesting depth that I don't feel like the Italian climate offers. So I think it's an Italian grape grown in California, if I had to guess.
It is an Italian grape, but it's from Italy.
Oh my gosh.
This is a Sangiovese from Puglia.
Really?
It is not from Chianti, Tuscany, Chianti Classico. And this wine was $4.99 in Trader Joe's today.
I love it. I freaking love it. That is awesome.
$4.99.
It does not drink like a $4.99 bottle.
I did not have high hopes. It's called Griffon, Grifone. I'll put the link in the notes. But it is a Sangiovese 2021 from the Puglia region. So we're not calling it Chianti because it's not from the region Chianti or Chianti Classico. But it is a Sangiovese grape from Italy.
And what I love about this too is that Puglia has such a great wine growing climate that I think it's about 70% of the Italian wines that we see in the United States are actually grown in Puglia.
You've spent a lot of time there recently, have you not?
We're starting a little company with some really amazing Italian partners in the northern region of Italy called Bolzano in South Tyrol, all around emotional intelligence and product design. And yeah, it's fun.
So here's our fourth wine of our tasting.
Fourth and final.
Okay, it's in front of you, sir.
Thank you, my good friend.
You're welcome.
Now initial thoughts about color here.
Darker than the one we just had.
Okay.
Medium concentration of color. It appears to be a younger wine because I'm not seeing a lot of the feathering of color on the edges. So that leads me to believe, I know what this wine is, but if I didn't know, I would use that to guide me to say that this is probably a wine that's only in the last 5 years.
Sure. And I'm just going to smell it here. Wow, the aroma, definitely a younger wine because the aroma is really bright. I get a lot of like cherry compote, like if you took cherries and baked them with some sugar and some vanilla. It's really nice there. Oak notes are coming out, a lot of vanilla.
Little purple flowers, like violets or something like that.
Yeah, or like honeysuckles or like kind of that tropically flower note.
And the more I swirl this wine, I'm going to do your hand over the top of the glass while I swirl.
I'm going to do it too. I feel like this is opening up a lot as it sits in the glass.
I agree. It's changed just from when I smelled it a minute ago, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, this is really cool. And there's a little bit of...
This,
oh, we didn't. Let's do it, friend. What I get here too is like almost a very light like cinnamon smell, cinnamon brown sugar, kind of a cool like apple-y note.
Apple like
baked apple, like apple that you might find in an
pie?
apple crisp or something.
A crumble.
Wow. That is complex.
What does that mean? For people that don't know what that means.
And for me,
let's
I don't even know
unpack
what that means. Like, so there's a lot going on when it hits my palate. First of all, I get really amazing mouthfeel. So I get this really nice, like, blooming juiciness is the way that I describe it. Like pulls.
Blooming juiciness. Catherine, this is our first merchandise apparel item that we're going to sell on the podcast. Note that, please, in your notebook.
But it's got this, like, it pulls from your mouth. It's almost, it's an astringency caused by the tannins.
Yes.
But it's very, what I would call extracted. So there's so much flavor. You know the difference between like a really kind of mellow chocolate cake that doesn't have that much cacao in it versus like, oh my gosh, this is such a decadent
or like
cake.
A torte. Where it's
this
just
is like flourless.
Oh.
Right. But it's not, I'm not trying to imply to our listeners that this tastes like chocolate.
No. Yeah.
But it's that mouthfeel. And then the flavor is full of fruit. There's the floral note. There's the spice notes that we discussed. And then the oak adds sort of a layer of additional stuff. So the three most complicated fluids that we know of.
Excuse me? I feel like this is going into another podcast with another rating on it.
The three most complicated fluids that we know of are blood, red wine, and olive oil. And this to me, like when I say I can see flavor, like when I taste this has a lot going on. This is a symphony with a lot of instruments. You've got the fruit in one section, all the different, a little bit of grapefruit, a little bit of fig, a little bit of cherry compote, berries, a little bit of green apple, but like baked apples. So that's like the fruit section, right? And then you've got the spice section, and I'm imagining this orchestra in my mind of this wine. This is most certainly a California wine.
Correct.
And I know that because it's got so much on the palate. It's got so much fruit. It was in the sun. It was a wine that, like, these were happy vines.
Aw, that makes my heart happy just thinking about those happy vines. Well, are you ready for me to tell you what it is? Any final thoughts on this wine before we unveil it?
But this wine is awesome.
Wait, what was the t-shirt? Blooming What was the
Blooming
first?
juiciness, I think.
Blooming juiciness. I drank it all, so I need more in my glass. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put a little more in your glass, sir.
Okay, thank you, friend.
All right, what do you think this is?
So I really believe this to be a California Cabernet Sauvignon from 1819, that time range. And I really do think this is probably, I do think it's Sonoma Napa. It really tastes like it's from up here.
It is Sonoma or Napa. You
And
are
the
correct.
reason I think it's Napa, if I'm right about the Cabernet Sauvignon, is that, and I'm not saying anything bad.
It's not Cab. Redirect. It's not Cabernet. I'm taking the bag off so Justin can see what this is.
Yes. No, I'm just kidding. This is also Sangiovese, isn't it?
Why ever would you guess that?
Because it's got that dry creek fruit smell that I love so much.
But it was masking as a Cab.
A little bit.
Hoby.
Is this your juice?
This is my freaking wine, dude.
Oh my God,
this
I
is
love it.
a vintage you have never had before. This is the 2021 Solovato
Oh my God.
Sangiovese
Bravo. I'm raising my glass in celebration.
to get in the bottle with the label to the market, branding, all of it.
Oh
Thanks
my
to you.
goodness. This is Sangiovese 2021.
Yes, it is.
That
I
was
thought
silly.
you were going to guess that that's what I was going to put in there. That's why I had to throw the Trader Joe's wine in there to
Oh my
like
God. No, I
throw
like
you for a loop.
I thought you might try to trick me. So I was thinking,
My wine. This is my
oh
wine.
my gosh. Well, I feel very special and honored. This is
Freaking
really,
made
Nikki,
this.
this is a beautiful glass.
Thank you. I'm
What I'm
so
gonna
excited for you to try this because you have been so close to the project.
Thank
and
you.
You've tasted the 19, our first vintage, and you've tasted the 20, which you sent me #chicken porn pictures the other day of you and Justin with some buttermilk roasted chicken that I
Yeah.
now need to try.
was
But
yummy.
you had
We'll make
not
you one.
had this one, which was just bottled in November.
Oh my goodness. And one of my favorite things to do with a wine is I like to go outside and because the outside air does something crazy special to wine. So as soon as we're done here, I'm going to take my glass outside and I'm going to sniff and taste the wine.
Now, if it's pouring rain out, how does that change that experience?
Well, I think the air when it is raining is the cleanest it ever is. And I love the smell of wet earth with wine. So I think it enhances it.
That's the other T-shirt right there. This because
so much fun.
Post podcast recording, you guys are sticking around and we're doing pizza night. I thought, well, we're gonna open one of these to have with our beautiful,
Oh my goodness.
beautiful Dan Richer episode 1 inspired sourdough starter pizza.
Oh my goodness. You broke out Gladys.
Gladys, she's in the house. Gladys, you guys, is the
Oh
name of
my
our sourdough starter. And the reason we
gosh.
call her that, I think I've told you this, because she used to be in a Gladware container.
I love Gladys. She
All
smells
right.
good.
Daphne, Gladys, you and all these old ladies, Toby. I didn't know this about you. Are you ready for our final segment, which is listener questions?
I can't wait.
Here we go.
Woo!
Listener questions. Amanda wants to know, what's one thing that you love teaching people about how you navigate the world? Either the wine world or the everyday world. One thing you love teaching people about how you navigate the world.
I live as a blind person in a sighted world. Things take me a lot longer. I have to be more patient. And what I've learned is that absolutely anything is doable with the right attitude, with a positive attitude and a mindset that just lets you do whatever it is you want. Because the only thing in the way of you and your wildest dreams is your brain. And if you can let your brain empower those dreams, you're going to rock it. And I work on this every day. I'm not perfect. And I would just say, let your brain be your best friend, not your worst enemy.
Ooh, I think that's good advice relating to anything and anyone, right? Okay, thank you. Sally, an avid listener and perhaps a previous guest,
Hey, Sally.
would like to know, what assumptions do you notice sighted people making about flavor based on visual information? And what technique do you teach them to get past that bias?
People look at things and they know what they think it's going to be. And even if it's nowhere near what they think it should be, they're going to think it should be that way, and they're going to taste it and think their first impression is going to dominate, is what I've found. Just like when you might look at someone and immediately judge them. You know, if you look at someone that's in ratty clothes in the subway station, you're going to think they might be not someone you want to talk to when they might be one of the greatest people of all time. So I like to say you can't judge a book by its cover. And the way that I get around this with folks is that if I don't let people look at things before they taste them, they can't make those automatic assumptions.
Well, there you have it, people.
And if I were to give your listeners just a few words of just some final thoughts, if you don't mind. Never let your eyesight, use it because it's valuable, but never let it get in the way of your overarching experience with life. You, whoever you are, with whatever you do, are amazing at what you do. Remember that. You're amazing. You do good work. Every one of our listeners here. You also are enough. As long as you deliver your personal best, that's enough. Nobody's alone in this world. We've got each other. Remember that. Your listeners can reach out to me anytime they want. Please put my email in the show notes.
I'm going to put your email, your website, bio, your TED Talk, all the things will be in the show notes.
You're so sweet.
I love you so much.
I love you, Nikki.
What a beautiful note to end on.
This is great.
Cheers, and
Cheers,
thank you
friend.
for all your help with Sollevato.
Oh, it's been amazing, and we have, the best is yet to come.
Amen. Sip well, everybody. If that is not the most wonderful, just virtual hug, kick in the pants, motivation, and inspiration to think about the world that we walk in every day differently, then I don't know what else to give you. What a special experience. I hope that you have taken away some new ideas about just how to use your senses and to be inspired by this man, because he is just something special. I want to thank Hoby so much for his time. He and his partner, Justin, with all of their different speaking endeavors and businesses, they told me that in the calendar year of 2023, they were home less than 60 days in their house. So they are busy traveling. So this was really an honor. Thank you so much, Hoby. You can learn more about him at his website, hobywedler.com. You can reach out to him directly, hoby@hobywedler.com for email. On all social media, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, it's just his name, Hoby, Hoby, Wedler, Wdler. Check out his TED Talk, which you could find on his website. It's also very amazing and inspirational. I hope that you are enjoying this. Always remember, please like and rate this podcast. It helps Catherine and I to continue doing what we're doing and get the word out so more people can listen and be just as inspired as you are today. If you would take a moment on Apple Podcast to type a short couple sentence rating about what you think, that would be hugely appreciated. And also, if you want to support the podcast, if you want to buy me a glass of wine or pass it on, and next time I see Hoby, I will buy him a glass of wine from you. Go ahead and click the link in the show notes where you can support the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you sip well.
Sip with Nikki is hosted by Nikki Lamberti. Production and sound mixing by Catherine Bryan. You can always send your listener questions to Nikki@sipwithnikki.com or find us on the Sip with Nikki Facebook page or visit us on Instagram @Nikki Lamberti. Thanks for listening. Until next time, sip well, everyone. This is Sip with Nikki, a production of Take 10 Studios.